The title of today's lesson is Integers and Absolute Values. By the end of today's lesson, you're going to be able to recognize and order integers and know what an absolute value is and how to evaluate it. So the first vocab we're going to go over is integers. Integers are the set of positive whole numbers, negative whole numbers, and zero. So the key thing here, ladies and gentlemen, is that we are dealing with positive values, negative values, and also zero. So go ahead and write this down in your notes. So an example would be 0, which is our 0 over here. We have our positive numbers, and then we have our negative numbers. So you think of an integer, just think of the number line. The number line has negative values, positive values, and 0. So to practice with our integers, I need to go and write down the directions. The directions are going to be to draw a number line and graph the integers. So we have these integers. So what you're going to do is draw this number line, and you need to tell me, where is value A going to be located at? Where is value B going to be located at? Where is value C going to be located at? Tell me where's it going to be located at on this number line. So we go and take a look at A. They tell me that A is equal to 6, so I find 6 on the number line, which is right here. So I'm going to draw a little dot to tell me that I'm at my value 6, and I'm going to label it A. Then I go and take a look at B. B is located at -2. So where's -2 on the number line? It's located right here. So I'm going to draw a little dot to let me know that I'm at -2 and draw a B underneath it. I'm got to make sure to label your points. And then lastly, I'm looking at value C. C is located at 5. So I'm going to put a dot up here because I don't want to get my C too close to my A and draw my value C. And now I went ahead and graphed my integers. How did I graph them? I just found the number on the number line and make sure to label them. Now, we're going to figure out what type of integer is going to represent our given situation. So go ahead and write down just example number 1 and make sure you're also writing down the directions. So when I read example 1, I'm looking at a gain of 5 yards. If I'm gaining 5 yards, that means I'm increasing. If I'm increasing, what does that mean? That means I am adding 5. It'd be a positive 5. Now go ahead and try to figure out number 2 and number 3. What type of integer is going to represent what the statement that's being given? So go and take a look at number 2. I'm making a deposit. Deposit means I'm putting money in. How much money am I putting in? $342. So we're putting money into our account. If we're putting money into our account, that means it's going to be an increase or a positive of how much? 342. Now let's go and take a look at example number 3. For example number 3, we're 30 degrees above 0. So if you're not sure what it is, let's draw a simple number line. In this case, it's going to be up and down. My 0's right here, so I would have 1, 2, 3, and on and on and on. -1, -2. If we're above 0, that means we're going up. So what do you think our 30 should be? Our 30, since we're going up, is going to be a positive 30. Now go and try to solve number 4 and number 5 as well. So we're going to take a look at number 4. Number 4 is we're making a profit of $38. If we're making a profit, that means we're making money. If we're making money, that means we're gaining money. If we're gaining money, that means we're increasing in the amount of money we have. And how much money are we increasing by? $38. So it becomes a positive 38. And now lastly, number 5, we're making a withdrawal of $12. Withdrawal means we're taking out. We're taking away from our bank account. If we're taking away from our bank account, that means it's decreasing. If it's decreasing, that means it's getting smaller, so we're going to subtract how much? 12, to be a -12. So this is how we use different types of integers in real life. So something else we do with integers is we want to make sure we want to order them. We want to know when we're going to be getting smaller or when we're going to be getting larger. So in your notes, I'd like you to draw another number line and label which way are we going smaller, which way are we going larger. Once you have your number line, I want you to go ahead and write down these directions and the first example. So we're looking at number 1. We have to figure out if it's going to be less than or is it going to be greater than? We have to figure out which inequality sign we need to use. So take a look at example number 1. I have negative 3, which is located over here, and then I also have 4, which is located over here. So how am I going to set this up? Which one is larger? Remember, with our inequality signs, I always think of them as alligators. The alligator always wants to eat the bigger number. So, which one is the bigger number? In this case, it's going to be 4 because it's on the larger side. So which inequality sign do I need? I need this one. So it's going to be negative 3 is less than 4. So now, in your notes, I want you to go and try to do number 2. Which inequality sign are you going to use? So looking at example number 2, I have negative 8, which if I keep going on my number line would be, was it negative 6, negative 7? So it's going to be on this side over here. So we're looking in the smaller section. And then I have 0 located right in the middle. So which one is the bigger number? Negative is way over here. So as it goes to the left, it's getting smaller. So between them, my 0 is going to be the bigger number. And so remember, my inequality sign, or my alligator, is always eating the bigger number. So my inequality sign will be negative 8 is less than 0. Now go and try to solve number 3 and number 4 on your own. Which inequality sign are we going to use? So go ahead and take a look at example number 3. Now right off the bat you should notice I have a negative number right here, this is negative, and I have another number over here, 5, which is a positive. So without even looking at my number line, not even looking at this, which one is the bigger number? Automatically you should be saying 5 is my bigger number. And since 5 is my bigger number, my inequality should be facing it. So it's 5 is less than negative 19. Now, number 4 is a little trickier because I have a negative on this side and I have a negative on this side. So which one is going to be bigger? So let's see. I have my negative 3 right here, and then my negative 8, I have to keep going down again, so negative 6, negative 7, so negative 8. It's way over here. Negative 8 is way over here. And remember, it's telling me as I move to the left, I'm getting smaller. So which number is bigger? The bigger number is actually going to be your negative 3. Remember, negatives are opposites. Smaller negative number is actually bigger than the other negative number. Basically, I owe only $3 over here, but then I owe $8 over here. So I always want to go with the smaller negative. So my inequality sign is going to look like this. It's going to be negative 3 is greater than negative 8. So we've just ordered our integers, recognizing which one, when is it going to be smaller or when it's going to be larger. Now the next term we're going to learn about is absolute value. Absolute value is the distance. The distance a given number is from 0 on the number line. Now, since we're dealing with distance, whoops, that's a bad arrow. Since we're dealing with distance, we're always going to have a positive number because you can't have negative miles. It's always going to be a positive number because we're dealing with distance. So you don't have to write the number line, but I do want you to write the directions. We're going to simplify and go and write down number 1. I'm going to show you how we're going to be doing this. So the technical definition is always looking at the distance from 0. So if we look at example number 1, I'm looking at 3. So I find 3 on my number line. It's right here. And now I need to figure out how far is it away from 0. So we just count. 1, 2, 3. So my answer for number 1 would just be 3. We're always looking at distance. Now, let's go and figure out number 2. Now remember, I told you that since we're dealing with distance, it always has to be a positive number. So if I would look at my number line, I find number 4, and we're just going to count. So it'd be, so I have to get back to 0 again. 1, 2, 3, 4. My answer is going to be 4. Now I don't want to see, oh, it's going to be negative 4. It's negative 4 away. That's wrong. Remember, we're dealing with distance, so it has to be a positive value. One little shortcut to remember is whenever you see an absolute value sign, it's always going to equal a positive number. It'll always work out to a positive number. Why? Because we are dealing with distance. So number 2 is actually equals 4. So number 2, 4 is my answer. Now, on your own, I want you to go and try to solve number 3. What's the absolute value of 0? So if we find 0 on the number line, well, how far are we getting from 0? Are we moving at all? So we're not moving. If we're not moving, is there any distance? No. So absolute value of 0 is 0. Oh, it's a bad 0. Let me make it a perfect 0. 0. Now, let's go and take a look at example number 4. Example number 4 gets a little bit more complicated. So, I have my absolute value, but I also have this little negative outside. Now, the negative is not an absolute value, so what happens to it? It's going to carry right on over. This negative has an absolute value, so it's going to come right over here. But I do have the absolute value of 23. So what's the absolute value of 23? It's going to give you 23. So ladies and gentlemen, your answer actually ends up being a negative 23. Why? You're going to tell me, but Miss Martin, there's an absolute value sign. There is, but don't forget there's a negative out in front. Because a negative is out in front, it's going to make it into a negative number. So be very careful about those. So now in your notes, I want you to write a column for your integers, then right next to it, write opposite, and then lastly make a little place for absolute value. I need all 3 of those in your notes. So we first start off with 7. Now technically this is a positive 7. So what's the opposite of a positive? Opposite of a positive is a negative 7. Now over here they want us to take the absolute value of it. So what do? We write our absolute value sign, plug in our 7, and what's the absolute value of 7? It's just going to be 7. Remember, this should be a positive value. Now, let's go and take a look at our negative 16. Now I have a negative. What's the opposite of a negative? The opposite would be a positive 16. Now once again, they want us to take the absolute value. So I write my absolute value signs, and take my negative 16, I'm going to plug it right in here. Plug in my negative 16. What's the absolute value of negative 16? It's going to give me a positive 16. So don't forget, absolute values will always be a positive term. Opposites, though, are going to be a little different, so be very careful of what they're asking for. Are they asking for the opposite value, or are they asking for the absolute value? Opposite value or absolute value. Be very careful. Now, once again, we're going to be using our inequalities. It's going to be less than, greater than, or equal to. We have to figure out which one we need to use. So go and take a look at example number 1. Now I have a positive 3 and I have a negative 3. So I have a positive and I have a negative. Now which one is bigger? Automatically you should be saying it's the positive one. The positive one is bigger. Since the positive one is bigger, it should be 3 is greater than negative 3. Now example number 2 is a little trickier. We have that absolute value sign, so we need to simplify it first. So what's the absolute value of negative 9? It's 9. This 9 isn't changing. So is it less than, greater than, or equal to? Automatically, ladies and gentlemen, you should notice, if I have a 9 right here and a 9 right here, that means they're equal to one another. Now, let's go and take a look at number 3. Now number 3 once again has an absolute value sign, absolute value sign. So we need to simplify first. What's the absolute value of negative 4? It's a positive 4. Now this one, watch out about the trickiness because the negative is on the outside. So what's the absolute value of 2? It's 2, but that negative is out in front, so it follows along and becomes a negative 2. So which one is the bigger number? Automatically you see I have a positive value. Positive value is always bigger. So 4 is greater than negative 2. And the last but not least, we go and try example number 4. Once again, we have absolute value and absolute value. So I got to simplify. Absolute value of 6 is 6. And we take a look here. The negative is inside the absolute value, so we're good to go. What's the absolute value of negative 8? It's a positive 8. Now these are both positives, but you should know which one is a bigger positive number. 8 is a bigger positive number. So 6 is less than 8. So ladies and gentlemen, I need a 2-sentence summary. Today we learned about integers, the number line, absolute value. Write 2 things that you learned from today's lesson.